Women's inability to pass on their citizenship can place enormous financial, psychological, and physical strain on families, leading to intergenerational spirals of poverty, destitution, and increase in family violence. Children are left stateless in circumstances where father is unknown, does not acknowledge paternity, or is stateless himself. Statelessness creates not just vulnerability, but also societal instability that can lead to violence and forced displacement. Eliminating gender discrimination in nationality laws is a peace and security imperative, as well as human rights and a development issue. Putting an end to gender discrimination in nationality laws would have profound impacts on hundreds or thousands of lives throughout the world. For example, improved access to education, healthcare, identity documents, employment and inheritance, as well as the reduction of statelessness, conflict, and forced displacement. UN Women proactively addresses the eradication of discriminatory laws. We have already helped countries to pass more than 700 laws that end discrimination against women, and 35 constitutions have been amended with our support in 35 countries. This is the time for young people to be part of this process. This is an issue that will affect you, your future, your children. It is important and imperative to bring this to an end. As we go to Generation Equality Forum in Paris at the end of June this year, where we will address all of the issues that need to be fast-tracked to address gender equality, this has to be one of the issues that we put on the table. I would welcome your call to me, to the President of France, to make sure that you emphasize the importance of taking up this issue and making sure that it does not fall off the table. And I thank you for being here today and for the participation in this meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your comments. You, more than anyone, understand that gender equality and nationality laws is critical to women's equal citizenship, and it's an honor to have you. Thank you so much for your participation. And now it is my real pleasure to welcome our first panel. So if our first panel would turn on your videos and join us. And as I said at the start, this is really meant to be a dynamic conversation. So I want to first invite our panel to just briefly introduce themselves. I'll be sharing detailed bios with the audience momentarily, but if I could invite you to introduce yourselves.
Good morning or good evening, everyone. My name is Nawafil, and I am a member of the Youth Committee at the Bahraini Women Union. And I'll ask Sakili to introduce himself.
Hello, everyone. My name is Sakile Shabango from Eswatini. I am a YSDC youth activist and also working for Women in Law in Eswatini.
Hello, everybody. My name is Niveen Athiel. I am half Iraqi, half Jordanian, and I live in Jordan. And also now I work at Solidarity is a Global Institute, Jordan.
Hi, everyone. I'm Shema, a researcher from Kuwait.
Hi, I'm Naomi. I'm a member of the Youth Advocacy Team for Family Frontiers in Malaysia.
Thanks, everyone. And I'm going to take myself off screen momentarily, but first I want to invite Naomi, so you can pull back up your video. I want to invite you to get us started off in the conversation. And you yourself have experienced the impact of gender discrimination, nationality laws. And I would love for you to share a bit with everyone about what gender discrimination and nationality laws means to you in your life and as a woman, and why did you get involved in this work? Thanks.
Thanks so much, Catherine. Yeah, so I got involved in Family Frontiers in Malaysia because I'm personally affected by the laws that we're trying to change. Because my mother is Malaysian, but my father is foreigner, and I was born outside of Malaysia, I have basically no right to Malaysian citizenship or anything like PR or anything like that. What's that meant in my life is that I'm basically a tourist in my own country. Every time I want to visit my family there, I have to go on a tourist visa and leave after a certain amount of days. And in COVID, that's really brought home the sort of impact, because I haven't actually seen my parents or my grandparents in Malaysia since I think a year and a half now, because I'm barred from entry and my Malaysian citizen family can't leave the country. And I want to stress that I'm still one of the lucky ones in that I have my dad's citizenship, he's American, so I can get to Malaysia as a tourist pretty easily, at least before COVID. And many people in my situation are actually stateless, or because of whatever family situation, they aren't able to access their dad's citizenship. And what this meant is that I love Malaysia, I feel very Malaysian, but the country doesn't really recognize me as such, so it's kind of made me a foreigner in this strange way. One anecdotal example is a few years ago, I bought a jacket with a Malaysian flag on it, and I was really proud of it. I would wear it everywhere in college in the US. And then I was visiting my parents to go home for one winter break, and I was at the immigration booth for foreigners, and the guy saw the flag on my jacket, and he was pretty unfriendly, but he brought over another officer and was like, "Look at this foreigner in Malay wearing our flag," and he was very upset. And I wanted to tell him no, I'm Malaysian, but I had no way of proving that. So yeah, I wanted to get into this work because I wanted to help children who are younger than me in my situation, and future children, because it's also generational. For example, if I marry a Malaysian man, my kids could be Malaysian, but only because of their father. If I don't marry a Malaysian man, then the connection is pretty much lost, and I think that's a tragedy. So yeah, I want to move on to Naveen, who's in Jordan, and like Malaysia, in Jordan, the law is pretty similar in that if a Jordanian woman has children with a foreign man, their child could end up stateless and doesn't have any access to Jordanian citizenship. So especially with COVID.
Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to thank you all for organizing this event, and special thanks to Catherine for her support. As a half Jordanian from my mother's side and half Iraqi from my father's side, I would like to briefly share with you my experience. As someone who grew up almost my whole life in Jordan without able to obtain the Jordanian nationality, I fully understand the suffering and the injustice that many women, their children, and the whole families are facing as a result of current Jordanian nationality law. I would like to share with you the kind of suffering that I am facing at different levels. Let's start with the educational issue. In terms of public universities, as I was forced to pay to be treated as a foreign student, which costed me very high fees, not like the Jordanian student. Also, and that affected me to start thinking that my whole way to reach my dream is getting complicated to study master degree or PhD, because the costs are really very, very high. Also, I would like to share with you the hardest experience with me in terms of labor market, as I suffered as an un-Jordanian from having a stable job because the Jordanian labor law. For example, I need to have a work permission, which the work permission here in Jordan, the cost very high. So the company should pay for this. So they always say, no, we will let Jordanian people work, not Iraqi or Egyptian or any other nationality. Yeah? So we suffer in this section very much. Also, I worked as a volunteer for many companies for years. Last year, I discovered that SIGI, working to the issue of equal nationality law, I applied for a job at SIGI, and now I'm really very proud because I am one of SIGI staff whose work for equal nationality rights. Also, to conclude, we are suffering from many issues that having 4 minutes to share is not enough, but I would like to focus on 3 main challenges that I suffer with. University education, because public universities here for us very high cost, and labor market, the hardest thing that I faced in my whole life. Also, and having access to public health center as a Jordanian people. We can't go to public hospitals just for Jordanian people. In regard to the impact of COVID-19 on Jordanian people, we were not included in the social security services as Jordanian, plus the psychological suffering in terms of getting infected. And the cost for treating me and for my any member of my family also. At the end, I would like to express my appreciation for hearing me, as I trust all of you to have a solution for our case. Now let's discuss the Bahraini experience by having my colleague Nawafel. So Nawafel, could you please tell us about current efforts to secure women's nationality right and how you are engaging policy makers and the public?
Thank you very much, Naveen. I would say that it is actually very humbling to speak about gender equality in front of all of you, and especially in the presence of the Undersecretary General of UN Women. I want to spend my opening moments by briefly laying out the principles that have guided the work that we do at the Youth Committee at the Bahraini Women Union. We believe that gender equality is the entry point of all forms of positive social change. So, despite all the challenges that women continue to face in current day Bahrain, we have found solace in connecting with like-minded individuals from all over the world through this global campaign, which has really enabled us to link an experience that is very indigenous and that is very Bahraini to the experiences of thousands of women from all over the world. The global campaign has further confirmed the incoherence of all the religious and cultural justifications of gender inequality in citizenship laws. And for me as a Bahraini citizen, learning about the socio-legal status of women in Eswatini, in Malaysia, and Nepal has really been very enlightening and has greatly inspired our local efforts. So I consider myself very lucky to have had taken part in this campaign. Now, to delve into the ongoing efforts of the Bahraini civil society, I'd like to speak about the initiative of Ru'a, which was launched a few months ago by the Youth Committee at the Bahraini Women Union, and is aimed at centering and amplifying the voices of those who are affected by gender discriminatory laws and practices in our society. And the 3 main objectives of Ru'a is to work on gender equality in nationality laws, to combat gender-based violence, and to demand substantive political representation of women. So in our work, we have adopted a bottom-up approach in which we attempt to engage policymakers and encourage them to keep pace with the needs and the concerns of young people, especially women. And in this regard, the Bahraini Women Union has been working very closely with the Supreme Council for Women and also the Ministry of Social Development in Bahrain, and also along with other women-led organizations in the country. So we have founded the Nationality Committee at the Union in 2016 in order to engage members of the parliament and also representatives of different governmental entities to amend Article 4 of our nationality law in order to allow women to stand on equal footing with men in Bahrain. So to talk a little bit more about the Youth Committee at the Union, we have been organizing a series of activities and public events in which we feature Bahraini women married to foreigners, and discuss and address the legal and constitutional frameworks through which we can advance gender equality in our citizenship law. The value of these activities, I would say, is the fact that they have really raised a lot of questions about the Bahraininess of Bahraini women, especially among a generation that was the first to be introduced to the Muwatana, or citizenship education curriculum in Bahrain. So we really think that this is the right time for us to push this agenda forward. It was also made clear throughout these activities that the COVID-19 pandemic has posed more compelling reasons for us to advance gender equality and nationality law, especially because a lot of women have a lot of concerns about their children's ability to inherit their properties. I would also add that the Bahraini Women Union has created a database of Bahraini women who are married to foreigners and who continue to struggle to pass on their citizenship to their children. And we continue to call on all those affected to reach out to us in order for us to be able to fill this statistical gap and to be able to assess this issue in our society. So I would conclude by saying that this is really not the result of a spur of the moment form of activism. Rather, it is a continuation of all the work that a lot of Bahraini feminists and a lot of Bahraini women rights advocates have been doing for decades. And now I'll move to Kuwait for my colleague Shaima and ask her to speak a little bit about the ongoing efforts in Kuwait.
Thank you for that. I would, yeah, much like all the other countries that have just spoken thus far, the situation in Kuwait is really no different in terms of gender discrimination towards women's right to confer nationality to children and spouses. So I would say that from the, the passing of the Kuwaiti 1959 Nationality Law, that was when our fight started, and it's still ongoing in 2021, but hopefully that will end soon with a lot of interesting development happening locally as well as in the region. So within Kuwait right now, not just focusing on of course, the efforts made by youth activists as well, but also on the parliamentarian level. 2 bills were proposed last week regarding conferral of nationality, of Kuwaiti women's nationality to children after they reach the age of majority in Kuwait, as well as at the same time guaranteeing the second bill guaranteeing the rights of stateless people in Kuwait, as that's also another contentious topic within the area that has a sort of overlapping between the two situations, which just leads to, I suppose, how intersectional as well as rooted this problem is of discrimination in general in so many areas of law, and how helping one group really isn't the end, because then you have to help all these other groups, or then you're taking away someone's rights in that aspect. But that's also really interesting when you look at it from the regional level, and you see how the region has developed since the first Arab nationality law of 1954 up till today, which when it first started said that a woman loses her nationality when she gets married, to up to last week after a meeting held by the Arab League regarding their campaign of belonging and legal identity in 2018 to now guarantee the right of women to have equal gender nationality laws with men as well, to confer nationality. So it's very exciting seeing all these developments as well, but also there has to be this sort of pushback by civil society to make sure that these things happen. Another exciting development that happened in the region was in 2015 when it first was drafted, and then 2019 regarding Arab Arab Charter on Women's Rights specifically, and Article 14 paragraph B specifically talks about Arab women's right to confer nationality. So as said, historically, that's just a really interesting movement, and I'm very excited to see how that's going to help, how that's going to change as well within the Gulf, within Bahrain, within Kuwait, within all of the other countries, as well as, of course, the other areas of the MENA region. But that's overall exciting. At the same time, it's also very hard to just focus on nationality with that respect. Earlier this month, last month, we had a mourning period by many women's rights activists because of the violence instigated against women under certain provisions of the law that allows them to do so. And so that just is a sobering reminder that our issue isn't really just nationality, it's more so believing in women's autonomy, believing that they have their own legal rights in so many different ways, as well as their own legal personhood and the right to live in the way that they see fit. And unfortunately, that's something that needs a a shift in culture, a shift in thinking, at the same time with a shift in law, and hearing about all these countries from so far away with the one unifying factor of having patriarchal cultures and a bit of misogyny sprinkled in there, that can seem a bit hard, that can seem a bit discouraging at times, but then seeing all these new developments makes me feel like, yeah, hopefully so far that things will be better. We have nothing else to do but struggle, and so I was actually interested as well in terms of Eswatini and what they were doing in terms of youth activism. I know that they have shifted as well, as we all have really with the pandemic, to online activism, and so I was wondering, Sakile, what efforts have been made, or what would you like to talk about that with that? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Shema. Eswatini has been doing quite a lot, just like all the other countries here. I think it's very important to note and to congratulate everyone for the efforts that we have been putting in terms of creating more noise about eliminating gender discriminatory nationality laws. In Eswatini, we've somewhat gravitated away from just ground advocacy alone and just sort of started using social media as a platform to advocate for such issues. And when I was actually thinking about it with the team, we started doing that because now we are remembering the fact that the issues that we are discussing are also the same issues that are affecting the people. So the people are the key stakeholders of the issues that are happening on the ground. So what better way of using them to actually advocate and actually make noise? So what we're doing is we're identifying certain individuals who have somewhat very huge social media followings to actually promote and educate people about gender discriminatory nationality laws and practices. And that actually worked a whole lot because we saw a lot of young people on social media. We also saw a lot of older people on social media and also on the ground starting to talk about such issues, because a lot of Swazis don't really know about a lot of issues around gender discrimination. And maybe just to put in there as to why I myself am involved in this form of advocacy. And that's the one reason is just that I'm a human service professional, I'm a social worker at heart. And just before that, I'm also a citizen living in Eswatini that is directly affected by such issues. So it is very important that we as young people advocate for change and we bring change forth. And on top of that, it's worth noting that Eswatini is one of the countries that made a pledge at the UN Refugee Agency for a high-level segment on statelessness, talking about eliminating gender discriminatory nationality laws. Because Eswatini rather is one of the countries that has women who can't confer nationality or citizenship to their children. And those barriers trickle down and hinder us from maintaining sustainable development in the country. And it's very important that as young people, we join forces and work together. Yeah. Catherine, I think it's back to you.
Thank you. Thanks everyone. It's so wonderful to get to share all of the work that you've been doing that has been so amazing. And you've been very humble too in talking about the impact of this work. I know you had some trending hashtags in Bahrain around the outreach that you were doing, and really amazing street outreach and like flash mobs talking with citizens on the streets in Eswatini. So all of these things were so amazing to see. So we have one question that I wanted to share first with the audience, and this is from a colleague at Equality Now, Dima Damus. Thank you for your question. And I might put a little spin on it too. Dima asks, is there in the opinion of the panelists, so folks can jump in here who would like to jump in first, is there any justification that you hear from policymakers in order to keep the laws, the gender discrimination in their nationality laws, beyond, I guess, the sexism that is kind of embedded in these laws? And I guess I would kind of tack on to that, what is your answer to any of the justifications that you might hear for why the law should be like that? What would be your response? And I don't know if one of you wants to jump on that question first, and others can chime in as well.
I think you have like an added question there. The second part of the question, I'm pretty sure we all didn't get.
What is your response? I mean, we've all heard kind of some of the reasons that are given for why the laws are the way they are. What is your response to why that's not the case? the justifications aren't necessarily reflecting the reality and the possibility and the positive benefits of gender equality and nationality laws.
Yeah. I think this is a conversation that we all had as a team in regards to the issue of national security. A lot of countries still look at issues of making sure that children from outside are not given cultural names of that particular country as national security. But in as much as some people may view it like that, it unfortunately comes to in the disadvantage of women. So as such, it's not really an issue of national security and the preservation of culture. You know, back in the day, we used to believe that each country exists as an island, but now we live in a global community. And if we live in a global community, there is no way that there won't be any exchange of cultures. So the idea of it being an issue of national security, from me personally, I don't believe it's actually true. It's a preservation of something that we can no longer actually hold on to anymore. And if it's an issue of national security, it should not come to then discriminate women existing in our countries, because that form of discrimination is what then continues to hold back the livelihoods of women in the countries and also hold back the development of that particular country.
Thanks, Sekile. Does anybody else want to jump in on that? We have a couple other questions too, but if someone would like to share any further thoughts on that, please go ahead.
Can I just say one thing about the Bahraini context or any Muslim context? Men are able to marry up to 4 women, and those could be foreigners, and this is not considered a demographic burden, whereas women are only able to marry once. So this is really, this shows how incoherent all these justifications are.
And I think you're referring to, for any in the audience that maybe haven't heard of this idea, that sometimes there is the idea raised that, well, if we change the law, it'll affect the demographic balance of the country and the identity by conferring nationality on a non-citizen spouse of a woman. And so you're kind of raising the that idea and those concerns don't seem to be equally applied. Not that that is you know, a reason for not welcoming citizens' family members into the country. Did anyone else want to jump in on that one question?
I think it also just has to, at least with what I've seen so far from the Kuwaiti context, there also probably seems to be a misunderstanding of what nationality is as a civil right, something that's really different from maybe what people feel in the sense of like my national belonging to, as something that's symbolic and can never be touched or changed in any way. And I think at times that also possibly deals with the idea of how they look at the state or even the ruling family in that sense, and how they prefer rights on us rather than rights being our rights as by value of us being human, I think, on that aspect. And to just touch up on what Nawafil was saying as well, that it also kind of shows us how women don't really have any political or cultural sense of their own. You know, if she marries a foreign man, that changes the demography. But if, for example, a Kuwaiti man marries a non-Kuwaiti woman and then she gets naturalized, that woman does not have her own culture or anything, because his culture kind of like takes over her own, if that makes sense. So I think that also is just another interesting like topic to talk about when talking about how women deal with culture and nationality in general, and if they have that sort of like I guess power to act in it, to preserve it in a way, to change it. So I think that also plays a role.
Thanks, Shema. And maybe, so another question I think is a really good one from our friend and Global Campaign coalition member, supporter, Deidre Brennan at the Peter McMullen Statelessness Center. And so maybe I'll turn this one towards, I don't know, if Naomi or Naveen, if you want to jump in. And this is a really important question about self-care. So are you able to find the time to take care of yourselves? And do you see that as an important part of your activism, particularly on issues that are so personal to you and that have affected your personal life? So how could that self-care and that kind of the importance of that be supported by the wider activist community?
Here in
I can answer quickly.
Now we start, no problem.
Sorry, Naomi, it seems like we have a little technical challenge.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I mean, I don't have too many tips about the balance in that regard. As I'm sure we all know it's very hard.
I'm so sorry, Naomi. It seems like we're having some technical challenge. On my end, you appear frozen. I know everyone in this past year has gotten used to these events, challenges at such events. So my apologies, Naomi. If you come back clearly, we can also put your response into the chat. But Naveen, do you want to pick it up from there about self-care and your approach to that?
Yes, here about our self-care, we face a lot of psychological things because of our nationality. Like I am here, live in Jordan, and I have a lot of things that I am not able to make because I don't have the Jordanian things. We can take self-care by have more confident in ourselves, and we can join more workshop and something like else to know more about everything what happened, and to know the laws in Jordan, and keep going in our journey to get the nationality here.
Thank you, Naveen. And I have a question from Simon Moreau, who has been a UNHCR Global Youth Advisory Council member. So great to have you with us, Simon. And the question's for Nawafel. He said, thank you for your great work you were doing with your union and team in Bahrain. I love how you also concluded by saying you're building on the advocacy that has been done by others before you. I would like to know what one thing or advice can you give other women groups fighting the same cause or advocating for other issues affecting them? Thank you.
Thank you very much for this question. I would just say that progress can be created through baby steps, and so it's very important in this kind of work to be very patient and to appreciate the small victories while capitalizing on our networks in all segments of society. This is the advice that I would give to other groups working on the same cause or any cause related to women and gender equality.
Thanks, Nawafel. So we have one more question. Actually, we have a couple more. We have a few more minutes before we go to the second panel. One is a pretty specific technical question, Naveen, focused on the context in Jordan. We know that in 2014, there were some policies that were intended to give privileges to some of the children of Jordanian women with non-Jordanian fathers, and also a 2019 amendment to the labor law, giving children of Jordanian women and non-Jordanian men access to work without a work permit. So the question was, are you seeing that these policies are being implemented? And have there been efforts to increase the rights of children of citizens, of Jordanian women and non-citizen men outside of nationality?
Well, here about in Jordan, about the work, everyone, not Jordanian one, should have work permanent so he can work. If he work without work permanent, he will be illegal. And if the police came, they will take him to the jail because he's not legal at all. As we are, this is a new thing in Jordan because we are, from Jordanian mother, they give us like a card so we can work like the Jordanian people. But first, it's for every job you want to go, they first will choose the Jordanian one, not the the child of the Jordanian woman, because it's first for the Jordanian. If they didn't see that the Jordanian one have the thing that they want, then they will take the non-Jordanian people. So it's really little bit very hard with this law, but it's really hard to find a job here because it's always comes first for the Jordanian, not the non-Jordanian people.
Thank you, Naveen. This question's for Sakile. Could you speak a bit about the role of male allies in advancing women's equality and nationhood, citizenship?
All right. Okay. I think that's a very good and important question. I usually have a lot of people asking me why I put myself in such a position, a very female-dominated industry that, we're advancing women's rights and everything like that. But I usually refer to what my mentor tells me and what we've spoken about. He says, advancing women's rights or gender equality without male involvement is like swimming upstream in a heavy flowing river. So we will never get to attain what we seek to attain in terms of gender equality if we're not involving males, mainly because patriarchy is a system that was is deeply embedded in the cultural constructs and the thinking of men in our countries. Now, if we want to progress and move forward, we need to re-socialize all males in our societies to start understanding the importance of gender parity in all decision-making positions and in all spheres of life. But if we only concentrate on just women empowerment and giving women the information and the knowledge and all of that, we are still leaving men behind. And instead, when women come back down and sit with men, it'll be seen as a revolt. So we need to move in one accord. And that means having male involvement and also working with women as well so that we can move together as one. It's a matter of re-socializing the entire society and not just leaving anyone out. And also, it's not even leaving out the youth. It's not even leaving out the older persons, because everyone that exists in that society needs to move in one accord.
Thank you. And that's, you actually have an amazing segue to, I think, our final question for this panel, which I'll turn to Shema, but just to also note, the beauty of advocacy for gender equality and this future that we envision of a gender equal world is that we all know that it benefits not only women and girls, but men and boys. And so we know, as I think you know very well, Sakile, that these discriminatory laws and patriarchal structures hurt men and boys just like they hurt or in addition to hurting women and girls. So Shema, I want to turn to you. We have a question from our friend, also at the Peter McMillan Statelessness Center, Thomas McGee, is wondering if, could you comment on the experiences of engaging with older generations within campaigns? And I don't know if that's something that you can speak to for your work in Kuwait.
Yeah, Thomas is also with Hawaii on the MENA Statelessness Network, so it's great to see him here as well. I think, yeah, when it comes to working with youth activists, from what I've seen, they kind of possibly share a bit of what I feel in terms of that there might be a bit of a disconnect or definitely a sort of miscommunication when it comes to how we demand for our rights and possibly how the older generations have demanded and are demanding right now, especially since so many people also see it linked with a lot of other women's rights, and therefore sometimes the language that is used might be a bit stronger. So that kind of causes a bit of a problem, especially when the older generation might see that this is still affecting our, I would say, like cultural, from what I've heard, cultural conservatism, which unfortunately, that's still one person's idea and shouldn't be for everyone. And of course, I don't mean that that's also for all the older people, but yeah, I think it is very hard to kind of like show them that we as youth activists are very serious about what we work and we know what we're talking about. And, unfortunately, an interesting word that Sakile used, and I think that's something that's in the NGO/human rights field in general, is the fact that it is an industry and a lot of people profit off of this. And so sometimes they don't want to take away that that little fame that they might get, as being like a person that talks about human rights, for example. I've definitely seen that some in the scene, unfortunately. And, it's like, well, we have more important things to deal with. We'll try to fix things and we'll try to communicate better. But at the end of the day, we want our rights, and we're not going to, spend a lot of time crafting our language in that way. Thank you, Sakile.
Thank you so much. Thank you to all of our panelists on this first panel. You're all amazing, and I'm so thrilled that I've had this opportunity, the Global Campaign and our co-sponsors, for all of our audience to get to hear from you about all of the amazing work that you're doing and your passion for this work. So thank you so much. I'm gonna now, before we turn to the second panel, I will ask our first panel to turn off their videos, and it is my great honor, and I'm super excited to share with you, and I'll ask Mpumalanga to turn on her video. Before we move to the second panel, Mpumalanga is an artivist, an artist and activist from Eswatini, and she has written a poem specifically on this issue for this event, and I'm really thrilled to turn the floor over to you to introduce yourself and to share your poem with us before we move to the second panel. And just I'll invite you to unmute as well.
I actually almost forgot that part. Good afternoon, everyone. Good evening, morning, wherever you are. My name is Mpumalanga Zwane, and I'm a spoken word poet and artivist from Eswatini. I wrote this poem called Nami Ngiliswati, which translates to Even I Am a Swazi. I hope you enjoy it. It is with my mother's tears that I washed my bare and blistered feet. With no bread to eat, no place to sleep. On my mother's door, I knocked 1 billion times. Ngimemeta, nami ngiliswati. Why won't you let me in? Mos, nami ngiliswati. Please, let me in. But in this place, people like me never seem to win. Was it a sin? My mother's love for a man from different borders, different seas. Could it be my cross to bear that I bear no place to belong? No place to call my own. On this earth, I have no home. But nami ngiliswati, see me struggling. Nami ngiliswati, ngingenise, nginike mbuve bami, nami ngitoba nemalungelo ami, ngosi yami, ngoba nami ngiliswati. Nami ngiliswati, by Mpumalanga Sihle Zwane. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing your beautiful poem with us. I've also put it into the chat so our audience can see, and we'll share it with everyone after the event as well. Thank you so much. And I want to invite now our second panel to panelists to turn on their videos and join us. Thank you so much. And I will leave the screen and leave the conversation. Abbas, I think I'll turn to you to kick it off.
Thanks, Catherine. Mpumalanga, thanks a lot for sharing this very touching poem. Can I please ask you what...
Sorry, Abbas, I'm so sorry. If we could do a quick round of introductions first, that was on me.
Probably I can start by myself. So hello, everyone. I'm Abbas Talib. I'm a youth activist from Lebanon.
Hi, everyone. My name is Yara, and I'm from Bahrain, and I'm a member of the Youth Committee in the Bahrain Women's Union, and I'm very happy to be here.
Hello, everyone. I'm Shireen Subah from Jordan, Sigi. I'm working at Sigi, and I'm a youth activism.
Hi everyone, I'm Melinda. I work with Family Frontiers in Malaysia, and we work with Malaysian binational families and on gender discriminatory citizenship laws in Malaysia.
So thanks a lot, everyone. Again, Pumalanga, thanks a lot for sharing this very touching poem. Can I please ask you what inspired you to write this poem?
So as a poet, I attended the Youth Sustainable Development Center's workshops on gender discrimination in Eswatini's nationality laws. And that is how I became involved in helping them to run their social media pages. And as Sakile had said, we had gotten different people to also assist us in sharing the word. And I got to see a lot of the engagement, being one of the people who was actively responding to people's comments, actively responding to private messages that are coming into the social media pages. And it really touched me because before then I had heard about statelessness, having done a social science degree. This was something that I'd seen, but it was the first time that I thought about it that deeply and had people actually responding to our social media posts to say that this is actually a situation that directly impacts them. Speaking to one of the young boys who had also come on to the workshop, who had also said that it was only when he was 18 years old, when he got his citizenship, when he managed to finally get his birth certificate and ID, and how this affected him. And the whole time he thought it was just something wrong with him, not realizing that there was a whole structural issue behind it. I was then moved to write this poem because Namin Iswati, it emphasizes the fact that even I am a Swazi. So Swazi is what we call a person who comes from Eswatini. And so just the question that, why won't you let me in? Why can you not see that I am struggling because of these laws that you have put in place? It's not just corruption. It's not just this. It is enshrined in the Constitution. And so many people then struggle because of this. And so I was moved to write this poem from that perspective, looking at the collective stories of people who had shared onto our social media. So having worked in Eswatini on the social media side, that was one of the things that we had really used, a big tool that we had used. And so I'd like to turn to Shireen. And I know that in Jordan, so much has been happening in terms of advocating for women to have the same nationality rights as men for many years. And I'd just like to hear a little bit more about what you are doing to take this reform forward from now onwards. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Today, I'm going to talk about women's right to nationality in Jordan. In Jordan citizenship law, there are provisions do not extend the same rights to both men and women, despite the publication of the CEDAW, which in theory make it binding in national legislation. The nationality law, with its discriminatory provision, conjugates with Article 9, Paragraph 2, conjugates the purpose of international human rights agreements. Okay, in Jordanian law and in Jordanian laws and legislation, Article number 6 that talk about Jordanians are equal before the law and there is no discrimination between them in rights and duties, even if they differ in race, language, and religion. Here we talk about that all Jordanians are equal in front of the law. If it's male or female, but it was mentioned above the violence that in Jordan, a woman did not get his right. Okay, in equal for the men. Excuse me, 1 minute, please. The law did not guarantee or give Jordanian mother the right to pass on her nationality to her children, male and female, but father can. And what is mentioned above violates that constitutional text on the rights equality between males and females by not allowing children of Jordanian women to acquiring the mother's nationality, which will negatively affect on Jordanian women's rights to active citizenship. As a SIGI launched the Civil Coalition for Equal Nationality under the name NAMA. We make NAMA's coalition as a memory for Naama al-Habashne. She was a Jordanian woman and she have faced and married to a Moroccan man, and she faced many difficulties because her children, they born in Jordan, but they did not have they did not get the Jordanian nationality and even the Moroccan nationality. So the aim of this coalition, Naama's coalition, believing in the role of the youth to raise our voices on this case to make change by putting pressure on on decision makers, and also supporting the local community on the text efforts to affect on decision makers. SIGI implemented many awareness campaigns under the name Equality in Citizenship and Nationality, based on human rights and Jordanian laws. Thus, that stipulated that Jordanians are equal with international agreements calling for gender equality, and adding the word gender to the Article 6 to be in the mean real of equality between or balance between men and women together, not only for men. As we mentioned with Naveen, on 2014, the government decided to give a proposal for non-Jordanian children to have facilities for them, but they implemented this thing on 2018. That concerned authorities issued more than 72,000 identification cards for children of Jordanian women to obtain facilities, but 80% of those concerned, they did not obtain that or give them a card or ID to work or to have facilities to have facilities or to have facilities to get the rights. Okay, and there's a gap by obtaining documents or to apply for the ID card. So they in Jordan here they faced many difficulties and on learning or in universities, or if they want to get some governmental documents, they face many problems. So in Jordan, I think Nadine talked about what she faced and what problems she faced in Jordan here. Thank you. لا بدي أسأل مين؟ شو راح تسأل يارا؟ Okay. I want to ask Yara, activism in Bahrain have been gaining MPS and also drawing the link between women's nationality rights and efforts to combat gender-based violence and advance women's empowerment. Could you talk about this outreach?
Hi, Shireen. Thank you so much for this question, and thank you for your talk and the information you have provided us with regarding Jordan. I think right off the bat, it is really important to note that there is a connection between these three issues. All three are, in fact, the main focus of our current initiative that my colleague Nawafil explained earlier, as the Ru'a initiative launched in collaboration between Bahrain Women Union, represented by the Youth Committee and the Art of Life Society, does in fact shed a light and advocates for gender equality in Bahrain nationality law, women empowerment, and combating violence against women. It's also really important to note that the work we're doing today and the outreach that we're working on is merely a continuation of the work that has been done for decades. So in that, I recall in 2005, it was the Bahrain's Women's Society that launched a campaign titled "My Nationality is a Right for My Children and I," and that was the first public demand for the amendment of Article 4 of Bahrain's nationality law that grants citizenship to the children of male citizens and completely disregards children of female Bahraini citizens unless there are very specific exceptions, and there are two of them. This movement later on was adopted or picked up by the Bahraini Women's Union in 2006 and focused upon through the creation of its Nationality Council in 2016. In our view, as the Youth Committee, in our fight to demand equality in granting nationality, we are also simultaneously combating gender-based violence and empowering women to have a full range of freedom. And that is why our call for equality in nationality has only gotten louder and more engaging throughout the years and is further aided today through the use of technology. In that, I'd like to mention that most recently, just a couple days back, an article was published regarding this matter. Myself, along with several members of the union, sat down to discuss our views on all of these issues and also several others regarding gender inequality in Bahrain's laws with one of the widely circulated national newspapers in the kingdom. The outreach of this article has so far been absolutely great. I mean, it was published in writing, it was published in video, and the video was viewed by more than 10,000 individuals, which is quite a large number for a country as small as Bahrain. Today, we are also working on delivering written letters to MPs demanding change in nationality law to grant citizenship. By doing that, we actually aim for two things. First of all, to create a noticeable movement in public opinion. We plan on sharing these letters, recording our delivery, etc. And we also want to speak directly to the MPs to discuss, for them to discuss this issue within the legislative authority. It's important to note that these actions and many others are not standalone actions, that they are actually, again, a continuation. And in that regard, we see how close the union has gotten to achieve this goal in the past. In 2011, as part of the Bahrain National Dialogue, it was agreed to change Article 4. This was later adopted by the Council of Ministers in 2014, but unfortunately, it never saw the light before Bahraini Parliament. The Council of Ministers later changed their narrative in 2018 through the report submitted to the SEDAW, where they held on to their position to not change Article 4, despite the outcries from civil society and the rising cases from the community and the children of Bahraini women. So we have tried on all platforms to respond to this, to respond to these claims made by the government, and also to change the narrative of Bahraini youth and Bahraini nationals in general.
I see that my time is done, so I'd like to conclude by saying thanks to all those concerned for inviting me on to speak on this platform, and being present alongside youth activists fighting for change truly acts as a major catalyst to keep going. I now would like to move on to Melinda, a member of the organization Family Frontiers in Malaysia. And you guys have done a lot of work to engage MPs on this issue, and you've worked closely with affected mothers. And we also know that there's currently a case before Malaysia's High Court on this issue. So if you could please enlighten us and share some of the approaches you have used to advocate for gender equality and nationality rights in Malaysia. Thank you.
Thank you for the question, Yara, and for your sharing. I think these exchanges of good practices and strategies are so crucial, which is why it's such an enriching journey to be part of this global network of youth activists and also the global campaign for equal nationality rights itself. One of our primary approaches is building the network of our focus population, which is Malaysian binational families and Malaysian women seeking citizenship for their children, while ensuring they have access to information and support, and closely engaging with the focus population to ensure that lived realities is given priority in terms of representation. And one of the ways we engage is by building the capacity of mothers, building the skills and confidence as well, so that power and autonomy is transferred back to women while in their journey of seeking citizenship for their children. Beyond this, we also build the capacity of youth advocates and also community service centers of elected representatives, because most often they're the first point of contact for these families in their constituencies. Our advocacy itself follows a very multi-pronged approach. As our founder, Bina, calls it, in times of need and urgency, it's like throwing darts and sometimes not realizing we've actually hit the bullseye, but also consciously ensuring we're engaging from every angle possible. We would say in Malaysia, for Family Frontiers, the media is a very strong ally for our issue, and it's helped elevate the presence of the issue of unequal citizenship rights, especially the case that we filed at the Kuala Lumpur High Court, as Yara mentioned earlier. We also actively utilize parliamentary mechanisms where we map out members of parliaments who are allies to speak about the issue in parliament. However, we're in a state of emergency and parliament is suspended, so unfortunately, we're not able to utilize those mechanisms now. Apart from that, we actively engage with human rights bodies, civil society organizations, nationally, regionally, and globally. And throughout the advocacy process, we engage the general public so that there is increased awareness and support for equal citizenship and recognition towards the lived realities. Through the Right to Belong project, I think throughout this webinar, we've been speaking a lot on the sense of belonging. We called our youth collective Right to Belong project, and we've been trying to engage more and more with young people in Malaysia to advocate for the issue of equal citizenship rights, building on the already existing strong youth movement in Malaysia. With how the pandemic further placed affected families, especially women and children, in precarious situations because of a lack of access to legal status, there was an urgent need for us to further mobilize the reform of the discriminatory citizenship laws in Malaysia. And considering the political and COVID situation in our country, and also the change in government at the start of the national lockdown in Malaysia, it pushed us to utilize the courts and file a case for equal citizenship that sought that Malaysian citizenship laws are to be read harmoniously with fundamental liberties that are guaranteed in the federal constitution, because the very constitution that guarantees non-discrimination on the basis of gender cannot discriminate its women, honestly. So we only hope to see that the case has a positive outcome, as it did with the Unity Dao case in Botswana, as thousands of families and children are depending on this case. Follow our case, follow our social media if you need updates on our case. And we're just hoping that the global community as well shows its support towards us during this journey of fighting for equal citizenship rights in Malaysia. And it would really mean so much for us, as we already have a lot of support and solidarity if we gather more support along the way. So speaking of our case before the High Court, which is essentially on women's equal citizenship, The campaign for equal nationality rights in Lebanon has also been strongly framed around women's equal citizenship. Abbas, could you perhaps talk about what gender discrimination in nationality laws means to you? I'm also curious about how you are approaching this advocacy, because it's been a really enriching process for me to hear from other young activists around the world as well.
Thanks a lot, Melinda, and hello, everyone. It's my pleasure to speak with my fellow youth activists on equal nationality rights. Actually, Lebanese civil society and activists have been fighting gender discrimination that has been rooted in Lebanese laws and legal systems that favors men and don't give equal rights to women. And one of the biggest fronts in this fight is the one on equal nationality rights in Lebanon. Lebanon's nationality law actually dates back to almost 100 years ago. So it dates back to 1925, and it has not been amended until now. And there's this ongoing joke, if you want, that we say it's one of the monuments that we have here in Lebanon, unfortunately. So the law discriminates against Lebanese women by not allowing them to confer nationality to their foreign spouses or their children, while it allows Lebanese men to confer nationality to their foreign spouses and children. But the law does not only violate our constitution and Lebanon's international obligations, especially under CEDAW convention. Actually, it's also a law that is so outdated and is not accepted anymore by anyone in the Lebanese society today, especially the youth. Gender discrimination for us does not only concern Lebanese women that are married to non-Lebanese and their families. It concerns all Lebanese women, and it concerns all of us as Lebanese and future generations. And today, with the big economic and political crisis that we are going through, Lebanese youth they are actually demanding a modern and effective state that guarantees the right of all citizens without exceptions. And we do not accept, or we will not stand by while Lebanese women are treated as second-class citizens. Because after all, this is not a matter of, for us of a point of view or an opinion. These rights, they are entitled to their rights, and it's not for us to give or not to give them their rights. And this is actually what has been, the heart of our advocacy efforts here as youth activists for equal nationality rights. We did, and there's ongoing efforts by organizing workshops for other youth to join us, to mobilize them and join us in our activism. There has been also a lot of innovative ways we are trying to raise awareness, especially through social media. And most importantly, we are engaging in advocacy with the Lebanese parliament, especially, of course, with a big list of demands today, but definitely at the top of these demands, amending the outdated nationality law. Let me just finish by mentioning here that we are also reaching out to other youth activists in the MENA region to join our advocacy efforts and to call on the implementation of the Arab Declaration on Belonging and Legal Identity, which was issued by the Arab League in 2018. And it calls for the equal nationality rights between men and women. And just last week, actually, the Arab League convened a meeting with civil society organizations and government representatives to establish an action plan for the implementation of this declaration. Thank you.
Thank you so much, all of you. And what a great point to end on, Abbas, this very exciting action plan that was developed to establish steps for implementation for the Arab Declaration on Belonging and Legal Identity for Arab League member states to take action to uphold gender equality in their nationality laws, as well as to take other steps to combat statelessness amongst children. So thank you so much for that. And also the call for others to join this effort, because I feel so fortunate to now count you all as members of our youth network. And we've had such amazing opportunities to exchange with each other through our regular conversations and our meetings. And so I would really encourage anyone, any youth activists, particularly those in countries with gender discrimination in their nationality laws, if you're interested in joining this effort, please get in contact with us with the Global Campaign on Twitter. I'll put our account in the chat. You can throw your email in the chat if you want to share. If you'd be interested to follow up and support these efforts. So we do have a couple, I should say you can find us on Facebook as well. You can drop us a message there also if you're interested. We have a couple questions. The first one is a tough one, and it's general to the panel, but maybe first I'll turn to Mpumalanga and ask you to share your thoughts on this, and then if others want to chime in on this question. How do you deal with patriarchy in your countries? So how are you approaching patriarchy and engaging with it and seeking to deconstruct it?
Wow, okay, thank you. Wow, I think when I think of patriarchy, I think it's an everyday effort. So for me personally, as a poet, those are some of the things that I like to enshrine in my poetry. But I think with the patriarchy, it's an everyday thing because there's so many subconscious biases that are so easily repeated and perpetuated through different things. So, in some spaces I've become known as that person where you have to be careful what you say around them sometimes, because I will ask you, like, why do you feel that way? And when you ask people and when you confront them about some of those patriarchal thoughts, they feel like you're attacking them, but sometimes it's just literally just, what makes you feel like that thought is okay? What makes you feel like that behavior is okay? And I think having the courage to speak up, to ask people those questions, and maybe even sometimes just try to understand from their perspective why they feel that way. So I think that's one of the ways that I think patriarchy can be confronted, just an everyday slow process outside of advocacy, outside of our more formal structures, which is the work that we do with our organizations and things like that. I think the everyday efforts also make a very big difference. Yeah.
Thank you. Well put. Does anyone else want to come in on that question? Abbas, did you take? Oh, I thought you unmuted, but I may have been wrong.
Actually, I just want to add very briefly, I absolutely agree with Mpumalanga that it's something that we need to confront in our homes, with our families, with our friends, with our surroundings. It's an everyday effort, as she mentioned. Other, of course, than the activism that we're trying to do, especially when it comes to advocacy within the parliament and so on. It's very important, I guess, for us to keep the discussion going and definitely try to confront people about patriarchy, but definitely in a way that we need to understand, but at the same time, of course, make people understand that, again, as I mentioned before, that women's rights or any other rights as well, it's not a matter of opinion, it's not a matter of what I think about it or they think about it. Is just human rights. They are entitled to human beings, and this has to be we have to be very clear about this, and this is what we can do by our everyday discussions.
I have a question here for Yara. Would you say you are optimistic about the government endorsing this proposed change with regards to gender equality in the nationality law?
Well, yeah. I mean, if I wasn't optimistic, I wouldn't be doing this, because then I wouldn't have anything that would push me to keep moving forward. In this regard, I think it's really important to see, again, like what I mentioned while I was talking or speaking, that we did come really close in the past. This topic has been on the table before. It has been discussed. It is being circulated. People are talking about it on social media. It does matter to so many individuals. And I feel like if we continue on the same path and we keep making this a trending subject and a trending topic, there must come a day where it is the most important topic to be discussed before Parliament, where it is, you know, something that is amended and changed, and where we can finally say that we at least have gender equality in nationality laws, and we can start moving on to other things. So yes, I am optimistic. And even though at times, you know, obviously when we keep advocating and we keep trying to reach out to people and we are met with closed doors, other times those doors, you know, they open, and it's nice. So yes, I am.
Thanks, Yara. And I know we're getting close on time, but we have another question, and maybe I'll turn to you, Melinda, and then Shireen, if you want to add on as well. How has the pandemic impacted your efforts, and do you manage to keep doing activities as before? How have you adapted to the new normal?
I think it definitely has, especially when the pandemic first hit us. I think it was so unprecedented, and none of our work was being done virtually, or just very limited work was being done virtually. And trying to cope with the impact on the community and trying to adapt to the new normal, it was all very overwhelming in the beginning. There was no guideline or framework that said, these are the things you need to do to care for the community if a pandemic hits you. So a lot of it was very ad hoc learning along the way. So, you know, throwing out impact assessments, data collection, and everything was done virtually. So it definitely took a while for us to get used to it. A lot of our advocacy was moving online, which thankfully we had already started working on social media advocacy, but we just realized how much of a bigger role social media advocacy played for us, because our court case was filed during the pandemic. There were several other cases that were filed during the pandemic. And like I mentioned earlier, our government changed just when the national lockdown was announced for the first time ever in Malaysia. So that meant that we lost all our major focal points in government, which meant that raising the platform of raising the issues on the ground to lawmakers was also difficult. It was difficult to get people to work on urgent cases that impacted communities. So basically everything that we did was virtual. We would have loved to enter communities, and even with capacity building trainings that we've been doing, we would have loved if we could have done it face to face. But I think it just helped us bridge the gap even more, because with the nature of our work, when we work with legal status, our community is spread across the world. And I think it also helps solve the problem of reaching those that have restrictions to movement, for instance. But yes, a lot of it is trying to adapt to the new normal. And I think a year from now, we've kind of got a hang of it. But we still miss being able to connect with communities in person.
Thanks, Melinda. And Shireen, we're very short on time, but you want to share just briefly how your work has adapted during this pandemic time?
As SIGI's work, they did many workshops or awareness for youth and even for the women, and to raise their voice and to get this case in high, to get to effort on decision makers. So I think in SIGI that it did many awareness workshops and many things for youth to raise their voice. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shireen. And so we're coming to the end of our event. I wish that we had just lots more time because I know there's so much we could talk about together. I want to thank so much our second panel. You've all been amazing, and I appreciate all the work that you've been doing and all the passion you bring to this work. I think it's very clear that we all know that to expedite progress on ending gender discrimination in nationality laws, youth across affected countries must be engaged to play a key role in advocacy so that we can achieve gender equal nationality rights. And I think it's very clear from the work and dedication of all of you and our first panel and our broader youth network that if we can work together, it might sound cliche, but we know that it's true. We've seen it happen in multiple countries, and we can end gender discrimination and nationality laws once and for all. And so to strengthen collaboration and exchange of ideas amongst youth activists, we're thrilled to be working together as part of this new youth network for gender equal nationality rights. I again want to encourage any of you in the audience and your broader network, if you're interested in being involved in this activism, please let us know. Get in touch with us on Facebook and on Twitter. And I want to invite now all of our panelists to just turn on your videos and join me on screen for a moment before we sign off so that we can just say goodbye to all of our attendees, and we look forward to being in touch with everyone. And a round of applause for all of you. You were amazing. So thank you so much. And thank you to our audience. Thank you to all of our co-sponsors, to Family Frontiers, to SIGI, the Institute on Statelessness and Inclusion, Youth Sustainable Development Center, and of course, UN Women. We appreciate everyone's support and really look forward to working together with you and wishing you all a good rest of your day, and may our work continue together. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Catherine. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks for hosting this, Catherine.
Thank you, Catherine. Thank you for everyone. Nice to meet you.